Hello everyone. So this is our final video that we will be sharing with you from Suzanne Fine Regional Cuisine here in upstate New York, in Lodi, New York. I can only come up with something very simple and very short, since all of my equipment is basically all packed up and I have very little to work with here. But I really wanted to do one more video here before we leave. So we're going to make an apple galette. It's all I had in the refrigerator was a bag of apples, so I thought this was perfect. And I think Bob and I can use a treat this afternoon. So here we go. Okay, I already have my pastry made. I rolled it out and it is in my refrigerator. I will actually demonstrate that after. Let's actually make the galette. So I have about 4 apples here, which you can just thinly slice by hand with a chef knife, or if you happen to have a mandolin, which I pulled out of one of my boxes, you can just take your apple and just use your mandolin. And I just go as close to the core and then just turn my apple. This for me is like the quickest and fastest way to slice the apples. They're not perfectly round slices as if you were to do it, you know, if you cut the apple in half and then quarter it and then slice it, but it takes more time. So this way, it's actually very short. And what I love about making a galette is that there's not a lot of sugar involved in the pastry and also in the dessert itself. So it's fairly healthy. And with summer coming, there's so many different beautiful fruits that you can use to make a wonderful galette. Peaches are one of my absolute favorites to use. Okay, so here are all of our apples. And you're just going to put them in a bowl. And I'm just going to add about a tablespoon of sugar. You can use, here I have some organic sugar, but just regular sugar is perfectly fine. So not very much, we're just going to add about a tablespoon. So just take your spatula and just toss the apples. And these are New York State apples. You can use whatever favorite ones. And sometimes it's even nice to use a combination of apples. That's all that we're going to do to our apples, just 1 tablespoon. You can go up to 1 to 2 tablespoons. It's actually good to taste your apple. I'll slice this off to see how sweet or tart it might be. Has a little bit of tartness, but it's actually sweet too, so I think a tablespoon would be enough. And so just put this aside, and let's pull out our pastry. I have the oven at 400 degrees, and I also lowered the rack, so it's not in the center, it's one rung down so that it's closer to the bottom, because you really want the bottom of the galette to get really nice and crispy. So here I rolled it out to about 12-inch circle, and it's far from a perfect circle, as you can see. That's what's really nice about galettes. It's so forgiving. So you want to keep an inch. We're going to put the fruit in the center, but keep an inch that we're going to overlap and close it all in. Now another ingredient that you could use, I have a wonderful apricot preserve here. You can actually spread a thin layer on the bottom of your crust, and then when the tart comes out, you can warm up some of the glaze, make a glaze with the apricot preserve, and brush the apple so that it has a really nice sheen. You don't have to do this, but these apricot preserves are really delicious. So I'm just going to take about a teaspoon and just spread it. You don't want to heat this up because you want to keep it nice and cool for your pastry. So in this case, we're not going to heat up the preserves. At the end, when we want to top the cooked apples, we can, but not now. So this just adds just another nice sweetness to the dish. But as I said, you don't need to do this at all. But since I have the preserves and they're so good, I figured we'll just put a little bit on the bottom. Okay. Now, if you were to do, I've been making this galette for years. It's very simple, and when your fruits are so fresh and local and in season, that's the time to do this. One of my favorite ones is peach, but peach have a lot of water in them. So if you're going to use that type of fruit, plums or peaches, you would take 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of flour, and 1 tablespoon of almond flour. Mix that together and sprinkle the bottom of your pie crust before adding your fruit on top so that it can absorb some of that water. It does a perfect job. So that's just a nice little trick. Okay, you can take the time and actually go around, and leaving a 1-inch rim, you can go around and really do it very carefully, or you can actually just take your apples and just gently pile them right in the center, spreading them out. You don't have to make this look absolutely perfect. The flavor is all in the crust, the apples, and once it's all baked off, it's going to be absolutely delicious. So I'm just taking a few, these are nice and thin, and I'm certainly not being perfect here by any means. I'll make a base here first, and then we can finish off by putting the remainder of the apples. So depending on the size of your apple, you're looking at anywhere from 4 to 5 apples, and leaving about a 1-inch, there we go, leaving a nice rim so that we can pick up and enclose just the edge so that all the juices don't come out. Okay, we are here, and I think we have more than enough apples, and it looks wonderful. So the next step is just to fold in your pastry. You just want to go in. This is about an 1/8 inch thick, this pastry, and I'm just going in and folding it up. It's really very rustic. I think you can see how I did that. And now what you want to do is just take an egg, whisk an egg, and we'll take a pastry brush, and we're going to just brush the outside with the egg and sprinkle it with a little bit of sugar, and then it just goes straight into the oven. Okay, so just take a pastry brush, and you just want to go around and brush the pastry. Okay, I think this looks pretty nice. I think we have it brushed nicely. And now you just want to take a little bit of sugar into your hand and just coat the edge. We're not adding any more sugar to the apples. And now we can take this and put it in the oven. I'll check it in about 50 minutes. Okay, so while our galette is baking in the oven, we're going to make the crust. So in here, I just have 2 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. To that, we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now keep in mind, if you're using salted butter, as you know, I always use unsalted butter, but if you're using salted butter, you can probably eliminate adding about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt to your flour. Your next ingredient is butter. So you need 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter to add to your flour, which you can do this in a mixer or you can just do it by hand. Okay, I'm leaving a little bit aside here, and I'm just going to go up and pull up a piece of butter and just push it with my fingers, just to soften it up a little bit. Okay, so all I'm doing is just picking up pieces of butter and flour at the same time and just pushing it away from myself. So we are really looking good. It's nice and small. It looks nice. All right, and then we'll add our remaining butter. And then we're going to add some ice water. And it is important that your water be very cold. Okay, I'd like to show you how there's various pieces of butter. Some are larger than others, and that's the way you want to keep it. You don't want it totally incorporated at this point. You can see the little pieces of butter. So that's perfect. Now what you want to do is you're going to use anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 cup of water. So I'll measure out 1/2 cup, but we'll start with about 1/4 cup. Now I'll just use my hand. I'll be able to tell right away if it needs more water. If it doesn't want to come together, you know that it needs more. Yep, so we'll add a little bit more. We'll still leave a little bit behind. This looks like it might be just right. Okay. Yeah, this looks good. All right. Okay, so just pick up your bowl in your hand until it forms a nice ball. This seems like we have enough water here to bring it all together, and if not, you can just add a touch more. But I think this is looking really good. I have it all together. We can put it right on our work surface, and you just want to gather it so that it forms a nice smooth ball, and it should have a little bit of moisture. It shouldn't feel totally dry. And it's very important to let your dough rest in your refrigerator. You can let it rest up to 2 days. You can keep it refrigerated for up to 2 days, or you can freeze it. That's one thing, this dough freezes beautifully. Take it out the day before, put it in your refrigerator, let it defrost in your fridge, and then you're good to work with it. You want to flatten it out a good amount. You want to have your dough not so much in a ball, but much more like a disc. So here's our beautiful dough. So you can just refrigerate that. You want to refrigerate that for at least an hour. And then you can flour your work surface and roll out your dough, and just have a piece of parchment paper on your tray ready to go. And then if you have a ruler handy, you're basically looking for about 12 inches by 12 inches. And by the way, I did not add any sugar to this particular dough because I put some of the apricot glaze on the bottom, which I think has enough sugar in itself. So I did not, but you can add a tablespoon of sugar to your dough if you want to have a sweeter dough. Okay, our galette is ready. Let's give you a nice good close-up of it. You can see how beautiful the crust, how nice dark golden brown it is. It looks gorgeous. And I did use my cake tester just to go in to make sure the apples are nice and cooked, and they are. They look perfect. And now what we need is a spatula, because you want to slide this off immediately onto a cooling rack here. So let's just slide this off. And then you want to take the paper off as well. So just use spatula to slide it off. Put just a little bit of hot water, not even a half a teaspoon, just because you do want it a little bit on the runnier side to be able to brush your apples. Let's take our pastry brush again and just glaze the apples very gently with your apricot preserve. So we can pour ourselves a little bit of dessert wine to go with the tart. But there's so many good dessert wines for you to enjoy. Now we can cut a piece. It looks lovely. And I always like to look at the underside. Oh, it looks so beautiful. I'm not sure I can, hopefully maybe show it to you. Let me come around so that maybe you can see the underside. Here you can see the beautiful tart, all the layers of the apple, and the beautiful, nice dark crust on the bottom, which makes it so delicious. We'll put it on our plate. And the crust is so nice and flaky. It looks beautiful. And I do have some beautiful mint growing in the garden. So we will put a piece of mint. And anyone that has worked with me at the restaurant know how much I love my edible flowers. Here is to all of you that have joined us in the past 17 years. Bob and I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It was so wonderful to be a part of the Finger Lakes community and wonderful to serve you for 17 years. So salute. Thank you very much. Okay, take care. Be well, everyone.